Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Jason, and I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. You go into marriage believing in love. Turns out, the woman I loved was secretly cheating on me. And when I confronted her, instead of guilt or even an apology, she tried to destroy me. Claire and I had been married for several years. She was undeniably beautiful. I fell for her charm. We had what most people would call a good marriage, at least on the surface, and most importantly, a child who meant the world to both of us. We had our arguments, sure, but nothing I thought was out of the ordinary. I ignored all the red flags she showed me as the years go by. I brushed them aside because I didn't want to admit something was wrong. Claire never valued my opinions, even early in our marriage. She would dismiss what I said, cutting me off in conversations like my words didn't matter. It was blatant disrespect, but I ignored it. Then came the secrecy. Her phone, which she once left lying around, suddenly never left her hand. She would turn the screen away, take calls in private, and when I asked who it was, she'd brush me off with vague answers like, just a friend. The more I tried to connect with her, the more she distanced herself. She started going out more, staying out late, and sometimes not coming home at all. Her excuses were weak, and none of it added up. I grew up in a single-parent home, and if there was one thing I swore I'd never let happen, it was for my child to go through the same thing. I didn't want my son to wake up one day and realize his parents couldn't stand each other. So, I held back from being too strict with Claire, hoping things would improve. But they didn't. If anything, it got worse. I started noticing how easily she dismissed me, like I was just another piece of furniture in the house. No matter what I did, it felt like I was losing her. One night, she left her phone on the couch while she hurried to the bedroom to grab something. Her phone was locked, but a message briefly appeared on the screen before disappearing. It was a flirty text from an unsaved number. I couldn't check for more details, but in that moment, my gut told me everything I needed to know. I needed to find out what my wife was doing, but I couldn't spend my days following her around. I had work, responsibilities, and at the same time, I couldn't ignore the feeling in my gut telling me there's more to the message I briefly saw that night. So, I made a decision. I hired a private investigator. A friend of mine had used one before, and he swore they could uncover details the average person would never notice. I knew that if Claire was betraying me, I couldn't rely on suspicion alone. I needed undeniable proof, something solid that couldn't be twisted or explained away. The investigator wasted no time getting to work. He documented where she went, how long she stayed, and who she met. He wasn't just looking for random encounters. He was building a pattern, mapping out her secret life. He took photos, recorded videos, and noted every suspicious detail. While he worked in the background, I had to act like nothing was wrong. Every night, I laid next to her in bed, knowing there was a chance she had just come from another man's arms. The waiting was unbearable. Then, one evening, I met up with the investigator. He simply handed me a folder. As I flipped it open, I knew my life would never be the same. Claire wasn't just cheating. She was doing something worse than that. This wasn't a single mistake or a lapse in judgment. She was involved with multiple men who carried weight in society. It was like she was an escort or something. Some of them had families of their own. Claire had entangled herself with them, meeting in hotels, private residences, and places no married woman should ever be. The videos were worse, intimate moments in cars, in dimly lit lounges, in hotel lobbies. My mind raced with questions. What was she getting out of this? Money? Status? Some twisted thrill? I had worked tirelessly to provide for our family, to ensure our home was stable, comfortable. And yet, that hadn't been enough for her. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with didn't exist. That night, I sat in the living room, waiting for Claire to come home. My heart was pounding out of sheer disbelief at what I had discovered. I gathered undeniable proof of her infidelity, and now, I needed to hear her say it. I wasn't expecting a happy ending, but at least, she would have the decency to admit what she had done. When she walked in, I stood up and faced her, my voice calm but firm. "Claire, we need to talk." Her eyes flickered. I told her I knew everything about her secret affairs that are no longer secret anymore. For a split second, she froze, but instead of trying to explain, she did something I never saw coming. She laughed, and before I could say another word, she flipped the script completely. She got angry as she started shouting, "You've been controlling me for years. You don't let me have a life. You track where I go, you don't trust me, and now you're accusing me of cheating." I was stunned. This wasn't a defense, it was a full-blown counterattack. Before I could react, she stormed into the kitchen, yanked open a drawer, and sliced her own arm with a knife. I stood there, frozen, as she let out a blood-curdling scream, dropping to the floor as if I had just attacked her. My mind was struggling to process what I was seeing. She clutched her arm, tears pouring down her face, and looked up at me with terror that wasn't real, but convincing enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. And then she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "Help. My husband just attacked me. He's out of control. I think he's going to kill me." Her voice cracked, pure desperation dripping from every word. I took a step back, my hands up, my breath catching in my throat. This was a nightmare. A trap. A setup. As I sat there, trying to make sense of what was happening, I quietly started recording on my phone. Claire noticed me tapping on the screen and immediately demanded to know who I was texting. I didn't respond. Her expression hardened, and she looked me straight in the eyes. Then, in a cold, steady voice, she said, "Nothing will save you from this. I'll make sure you suffer until you die." I felt a chill run through me. Minutes later, flashing red and blue lights lit up the front of the house. The cops stormed in, guns drawn, demanding that I put my hand where they could see them. Claire was sobbing in a corner, shaking as she pointed at me. "He snapped," she whimpered. "I just wanted to go out with my friends, and he lost it." I tried to speak, but what could I say? A man defending himself against a sobbing, injured woman? It didn't matter that I had never laid a hand on her. It didn't matter that I had proof of what she had done. In that moment, I was the monster. They grabbed me, cuffed me, and before I knew it, I was being shoved into the back of a police car. Sitting in that station, handcuffed to a bench, everything started sinking in. She had planned this. The affair, the accusations, the injuries, it was all a calculated move. And she wasn't done, but I couldn't bring myself to expose what I know about her, because I know she was going to end up in jail for this stunt. It was late, so I couldn't get my lawyer, so they kept me in the station till the next day. The next day, I sat in the cold interrogation room, waiting to be questioned again. My lawyer walked in, holding a stack of papers, divorce papers. Claire hadn't wasted a second. She wasn't just trying to ruin my name. She wanted to take everything. The house, the assets, and worst of all, full custody of our child. It was all happening too fast. Yesterday evening, I confronted her about cheating. Today, my entire life was falling apart. She wanted to turn everyone against me. And for the first time, I realized that if I didn't fight back the right way, I would lose everything. I had ignored the truth for too long because I knew exposing her would ruin her. I didn't think she would take it this far. I was wrong. If she wanted a war, she was about to get one. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the SD card, the one holding everything the private investigator had gathered. Videos, photos, proof. And then there was the recording I made last night when she staged a scene, screaming and acting like I had attacked her. I had my phone recording the whole time. Her voice was crystal clear as she threatened me. "I'll make sure you suffer until you die. You'll lose everything, and no one will believe you." Those words were meant to destroy me. Now, they were the very thing that would bring her down. I slid everything over to my lawyer. If Claire thought she could twist the law against me, she was about to find out what real consequences looked like. The fallout was brutal. As soon as law enforcement reviewed the evidence, her entire story collapsed. The same officers who had looked at me with suspicion now saw her for what she was, a fraud and a manipulator who had wasted their time with a false report. And the best part? The powerful men she had been sleeping with, the ones who thought they were untouchable, were now scrambling. If this got out, the lives of the men she had been sleeping with would be ruined too. Claire wasn't just losing the divorce. She was about to lose everything. I can't even explain the relief I felt when the police officially cleared me of all charges. When the truth finally came out, it was Claire who had to face the consequences. My lawyer sat me down and told me something I hadn't even considered. I had every right to sue her for what she put me through. At first, I hesitated. But then I thought about how she had lied to the police, tried to have me arrested, and turned everyone I knew against me. She didn't just cheat, she tried to bury me. That's when I knew she had to face the full force of what she had done. With the evidence I had, filing a case against her was easy. But before I could do anything, Claire was arrested by the police for filing a false police report and obstruction of justice. The same legal system she tried to use against me now turned on her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I didn't have to say a single word or do anything because this is her karma. The moment Claire's name was dragged into a legal scandal, all the men she had been sneaking around with cut ties with her immediately. None of them wanted to be linked to a woman facing charges. She thought she had options, but in reality, she was just a disposable secret to them. Then came the divorce. Claire thought she would walk away with everything. The house, my savings, even my business assets. She thought she could ruin me financially and start fresh with a comfortable payout. But the court saw what kind of person she truly was. Not only did she lose the case, but she was also ordered to pay damages and legal fees for the chaos she caused. Instead of leaving our marriage rich, she walked away with nothing but debt. But the biggest blow? Custody of our child. Claire fought for full custody, claiming I was dangerous and unfit. But her lies had already been exposed, and the judge saw through every one of them. In the end, I was granted full custody, and she was given limited, supervised visits. The woman who once thought she could take my child away from me was now the one being told when and where she could see them, if at all. And then, reality hit her hard. She went to jail. It wasn't for a long time, but it was long enough for her to realize that actions have consequences. When she finally got out, she didn't have the money or connections to rebuild the life she once had. She was drowning in debt from legal fees, struggling to afford even the basics. The best part? I didn't have to ruin her. She did it all to herself. It's crazy to think about how close I was to losing everything. If I had let my emotions take over, if I had reacted out of anger instead of strategy, I could have ended up in jail, broke, and without my child. Staying calm at first felt like the right thing to do, but looking back, I realize that if I had stayed quiet any longer, Claire would have buried me completely. The truth is, some people don't just want to hurt you. They want to destroy you. And if you give them the chance, they will. I know some of you might be thinking, why didn't I leave sooner? The answer is simple. I loved her. I believed in our family. And when you have a child with someone, you don't just throw everything away over suspicion. But love shouldn't make you blind, and loyalty should never be one-sided. I learned the hard way that the person you trust the most can also be the one plotting your downfall behind your back. That's why it's important to pay attention to actions, not just words. If someone keeps disrespecting you, lying to you, or making you feel crazy for questioning things, chances are you're not the problem. At the end of the day, I didn't win because I was lucky. I won because I kept my head down, gathered evidence, and played the long game. Claire thought she could manipulate the system, but karma had other plans. She thought she could take everything from me, but in the end, she lost it all. There's nothing more freeing than knowing that someone who tried to destroy you no longer has any power over you. So let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have fought back the way I did, or handled it differently? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if you believe in justice and standing up for yourself, make sure to like and share this video. You never know who might need to hear this today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.